What is up? What is up, YouTube? Diddy won, lost. Boy, man, did we do this? Hey, y'all, Uncle Mike. First of all, I'm tired from the swim. Hey, exercise. Walk up the steps twice. Exercise. Run in place. Walk around the living room and dining room. Walk up the street. Walk back. Do some jumping jacks. Exercise. Have you did any exercise today? I'm going to try my best to help y'all do some exercise for Uncle Mike. I've been doing some exercise, man, and it make me feel a lot better. But anyway, Little Rod, I think we haven't done this one. I already gave it a thumbs up. Little Rod, RICO versus Diddy dismissed? Yeah, it's been dismissed. Diddy won. Or maybe he lost. Hit that subscribe button. We are at this that surprise witness. I like her, man. She cool, man. She give it straight with no chases, man. She goes straight to the documents. I would love to get the documents and do what she doing, but I'm gonna let her do her thing because I'm not good at it. Hey, hit that subscribe button, man. Hit that bell. I got a headache, man. I got a crick in my neck, and I'm still out here pushing. You gotta push what you believe. You gotta push what you believe. Shout out to all my patrons. Let's get into it. Let's check it out.
Everybody, how are you doing this fine Tuesday? I'm doing quite well. Well, if you look around the internet, it's actually pretty unclear what in the heck just happened with Lil Rod's lawsuit against 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. I mean, if you look at some people's accounts, it was a huge win for Diddy. If you look at some people's accounts, it was a huge loss for Diddy. Lil Rod lost, Lil Rod won, RICO case dismissed. What is going on? I consulted with the documents, so let's look at those together. Now, if you don't remember who Lil Rod is, I just can't blame you because so much stuff has gone on, but Lil Rod was one of the first credible, I'll put credible in quotes, because that does appear to be what the general public did concede, but he was one of the first credible sources to make an allegation of SA or S trafficking against 𝗟𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. Okay, so why is he supposedly credible? Well, it's because he came out with his allegations very long ago in the grand scheme of what's been going on with Diddy. He first filed his lawsuit in federal court all the way back in February of last year. So over a year ago, this would have been before all those Busby cases, before all the Jane Doe cases, and it would have been only 2 or 3 months after Cassie filed her lawsuit against Diddy. So again, this is one of the first lawsuits. Another reason why people consider this to be more credible is because Lil Rod Jones is a music producer who is making allegations about Diddy from the point of view of someone who had worked for Diddy or with Diddy as a music producer. This person was supposed to get credits on the Love album Off the Grid. Now, when the case dropped originally, I did cover it on my channel pretty extensively. I read through it on all of that. You should check out the Diddy playlist if you missed that. I mean, again, it was over a year ago. But just yesterday, March 24th, 2025, the judge in the case did make a significant number of findings in an opinion and an order. Now, originally, Lil Rod had sued under federal laws as well as state tort claims. The federal laws are also civil, but they are allowing on subject matter jurisdiction these claims to be brought in federal court because it would be a federal question jurisdiction. Now, the two laws, the federal claims that Lil Rod Jones did try to file under were the civil RICO statute and the Trafficking Victims Protection Act. So I think this first federal claim may be why there is some confusion out in the general public over what RICO claims got dismissed. RICO can be charged by the feds as a crime, or it could be charged by an individual as a tort. A tort is something that is a private action between citizens or between people or companies, between parties who are not the government. Then there's a criminal RICO statute, which the government has the sole jurisdiction to bring. So essentially, the elements are very similar. You do have to prove if you're suing for this, whether you're trying to get somebody convicted of a crime or whether you're trying to sue somebody as a victim of a civil RICO. So 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jones and the feds, and both in the SDNY, Southern District of New York, both at the same time had some RICO allegations going on. As of yesterday, March 24th, 2025, 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jones's federal RICO charges or allegations or claims have been dismissed. This is only pursuant to the civil, not the criminal, the civil RICO charge, which was made by 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jones, a private party. He is not a representative of the government. He is not the feds. He is not the law. He is just a private citizen. So his RICO charges have been dismissed. They have been dismissed. We can get into the reasons why in just a moment, but I did want to sort out the confusion. So it does seem to be a point of issue that people thought that if Diddy was found to be liable of this RICO charge, which the judge did not determine Diddy's liability, because the judge said that Lil Rod and Tyrone Blackburn did not even provide enough evidence or allegations to adequately plead RICO so that it can be decided on whether or not Diddy did the RICO. The judge is basically saying Tyrone Blackburn and Lil Rod Jones did not do a good enough job pleading their case. So the judge cannot even allow it to go on beyond a motion to dismiss. Now, why is it that the judge could have dismissed some of Lil Rod's claims against Diddy and Combs Enterprises and the rest, but the judge did not dismiss others? What was going on in that, just to remind y'all, is that Lil Rod had sued about a year ago a bunch of parties, including Christina Karam, including Diddy, including Combs Enterprises, including UMG, including Motown. He did drop some of those defendants. But Diddy, for his own part, then responded to that lawsuit and filed a motion to dismiss. He said none of these claims are cognizable for many reasons, and he wrote out these long, motion to dismiss arguments. So yesterday, the opinion and order that came down was the judge deciding on Diddy's motion to dismiss. And at the stage of a motion to dismiss, the judge is really just deciding, has this plaintiff, if I take everything they said as if it was a factual statement and it was true, did they plead enough? Did they make the arguments to satisfy the elements of each individual claim of action? So all the claims of action are separate. He had, like I said, Lil Rod had alleged 2 federal tort claims. That was the RICO Act, the civil one, and the Victims Protection Act, the federal one. And again, that is a civil cause of action, but still under federal laws. These are federal laws that the federal government put in place, like Congress and stuff like that. Now, Lil Rod also sued on a bunch of causes of action which were based in state tort law. Now, this is very interesting to me because if you're also keeping up with that Baldoni case, this is coming up a lot right now in that Baldoni, Lively, and all of them. Like, all of them have spent a significant amount of lawyer money arguing on which law of which state should apply. But over here in this Lil Rod with the Tyrone Blackburn representing him and Diddy case, they didn't really spend a lot of time or money arguing on state law at all. So you do have the judge in this filing right here kind of having to piece together what's really going on. Like, I don't even know which state law to apply, but for the purposes of right now, I'm gonna just apply New York or Florida, and you'll see as we get through it. But the state law claims, so not RICO and not the Trafficking Victim Protection Act, the other claims that were not those two were as follows: assault, emotional distress claims, including intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of emotional distress, which deserves its whole own video as far as explaining what those things are. But just know that the second major cause of action, as alleged by Lil Rod Jones in this state tort cluster, were emotional distress claims. So assault number 1, emotional distress number 2. The third one was premises liability. So Diddy had control over the premises of either the yacht or the home or the whatever, record studio, whatever. And he had control over inviting other people, including this Jane Doe 1, Cuba Gooding Jr., and so Lil Rod was suing, saying, look, Diddy had the control over these people, over this property, and for that reason, he owes me a liability to have made sure that I didn't get assaulted. And then the fourth state tort claim was a breach of contract claim. Lil Rod's alleging me and Diddy had a contract. He agreed to pay me to write songs.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to effectuate that contract, all this other stuff happened. He didn't operate in good faith and he didn't pay me my money. So for those reasons, I'm going to sue him under a breach of contract as well. So in all, there were many statutes that Lil Rod relied upon, but generally we were working with 6 major claims. The 2 federal ones having to do RICO and the Trafficking Victim Protection Act.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other 4 were as assault, emotional distress, premises liability, and breach of contract. Okay. So yesterday, what did the judge actually do? Kept some of those claims alive and basically killed off some of those claims. Now, just to note as a side note, there are a couple of outstanding issues which relate to Justin Combs and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr., but those are in a separate bucket off to the side. What the judge did yesterday was got rid of some of these claims. They cannot continue forward. Diddy's motion to dismiss was granted on some of these issues. And so in that way, Diddy did win. He won on a few of his arguments. However, the judge did allow some claims, even though Diddy said they should be dismissed, the judge allowed some of Lil Rod Jones's claims to go forward. So in that way, Lil Rod did win and Diddy did lose. However, this was only a motion to dismiss. This was not the dispositive action. There is no discussion of specific damages. There's no discussion of how much money. There's no discussion of the fact that, yes, Diddy definitely is going to have to pay Lil Rod. Diddy was found liable. None of that. So we're really just looking at a kind of intermediary pre-discovery ruling. Now, all of these arguments had to be made without the parties going into any discovery. The fact that this has now been allowed to move forward on at least some claims, which I will specifically enumerate momentarily, the fact that it has been allowed to move forward means that discovery is going to start. Diddy and the rest of the named defendants who did have their causes of action survive, they only have 2 weeks to now reply to the complaint beyond a motion to dismiss. They have to actually start to file papers within 2 weeks. So let's go through one by one each of these specific claims to see what survived, what we can look forward to the court having to decide in the future, and what is not going to be discussed anymore because the judge said, no, Lil Rod and Tyrone Blackburn, you did not do a good enough job. We will start by going through the opinion and order. And this, again, document from yesterday. Okay. Plaintiff brings this suit alleging violations of the RICO Act and the Victim Protection Act based on Diddy's alleged misconduct. Before the court were motions to dismiss, which were filed by Diddy, his enterprises, and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. For the reasons that follow, the motions are granted in part and denied in part. So the judge does get into the factual background and allegations. I am not going to really take time on these because I have done it before and because I'm just sick and tired of reading about the depravity and the debauchery. Whether it happened or not, I'm sick of reading about it. But it just basically outlines what was alleged, that Lil Rod Jones was assaulted by Diddy, allegedly. It was facilitated by 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, his assistant, and Justin Dior Combs, as well as 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr. were both named. So is a Jane Doe 1 as an alleged assailant. This would have been Young Miami's cousin, purportedly. He allegedly lived with Diddy over the duration of these assaults because he was working on this Love Off the Grid album. There was this whole Pew Pew incident at the Chalice recording studios, which I'm not a judge. I don't know. All I'm going to say is I think the judge did handle the Pew Pew incident with a little bit of nonchalance. Like, it doesn't really seem like the judge spent too much time paying attention to that whole thing. Yeah. So these are the factual allegations. Thanksgiving Day, 2022. Jones alleges he was SA'd by Jane Doe 1, coerced into participating in commercial acts, alleged some things had gone on with underage people at parties who were forced to drink liquor laced with threatened to eat Rodney Jones's face, purportedly, allegedly. In addition to Jones's various claims of misconduct, he also alleges he was not compensated. Okay, so on top of the assault allegations, he also alleges Lil Rod Jones that he was not compensated. Now, this is very important because at this stage, the motion to dismiss stage, the judge was obligated by law to consider everything that Rodney Jones had said as if it were true. Okay, so had to consider as if it were true. Then the judge talks about the procedural history of the case, like it was filed by Lil Rod Jones February of last year, and Jones had voluntarily dismissed his claims against certain defendants, including 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, and I think Motown, etc. Oh, this is important. He dismissed it only after the court had denied a request by those defendants to impose sanctions. So the defendants that Lil Rod Jones had dismissed his case against already, those defendants had actually tried to get sanctions against Tyrone Blackburn, who is the lawyer on this case. Now, before the judge even gets into the specifics of the case and his findings, he gives a warning to Tyrone Blackburn, the lawyer for Lil Rod Jones, the plaintiff's lawyer. The judge says, before addressing the substance of Jones's claims, the court finds it necessary to issue a warning to plaintiff's lawyer, Tyrone Blackburn. Previously, now this also, y'all, this comes right on the heels of Tony Busby, also in the Southern District of New York, also representing plaintiffs against Diddy. He just got fussed at and admonished as well. He actually got denied permission to even practice in this court by the grievance committee. And so there's a lot of lawyers behaving badly, allegations going on. The court says about Tyrone Blackburn, previously the court declined to impose sanctions on Tyrone Blackburn related to the, quote, admittedly false claims he filed on behalf of Rodney Jones against UMG and associated defendants. Quote, while Blackburn may have acted incompetently at times, the court determined that there was insufficient evidence to conclude that he had engaged in a pattern of bad faith. So this incompetence versus bad faith determination was a big one, because a lawyer can be incompetent and kind of like, oops, that's one thing. But if a lawyer did something knowingly, willingly, recklessly, in bad faith, that would rise to a higher degree of sanctionable activity. And the judge is saying, I already found that you were a little bit incompetent, but I already found that you didn't act in bad faith. However, keep it cute. Don't get crazy is basically what the judge is saying.
Keep
Blackburn
it cute. Don't get
has
crazy.
A pending referral to the Southern District of New York Disciplinary Committee for his repeated failure to investigate basic elements of his cases. Okay, so he's already pending to be heard by the grievance committee for a, quote, repeated failure to investigate basic elements of his cases, which is something that Jay-Z alleged about Tony Busby, that he didn't investigate the basic elements of that Jane Doe. He didn't investigate basic stuff. Again, I'm bringing Busby in this because there's a lot of stuff in common, like the parties, specifically the defendants, Diddy, the fact that the same exact types of things are being alleged, the fact that they're in the same district, the Southern District of New York, and they would be subject to the discipline of the same committee, the Southern District of New York Grievance Committee. But this is not a Tony Busby case. This is Tyrone Blackburn. In light of this, the court finds much of Blackburn's conduct regarding Diddy's motion to dismiss to be unsettling. So the court is saying, I find Tyrone Blackburn's behavior to be unsettling. His filings are full of inaccurate statements of law, conclusory allegations, and, quote, inappropriate ad hominem attacks on the other side's lawyers. For example, he urged the court to consider a grand jury indictment of Diddy on related criminal charges. Blackburn writes, quote, as evidenced by the U.S. Attorney's press conference and the grand jury indictment, defendant Sean Combs and the RICO enterprise are, quote, presumed guilty of being a RICO criminal organization, end quote. The judge said that any licensed member of the bar would espouse such an absurd understanding of the law is not just disturbing, it is shocking. Then, rather than focusing on the claims pleaded in his lawsuit, Blackburn writes, quote, it is evident from the multiple civil lawsuits and the 14-page indictment, the kind of sexually deviant monster Sean Combs is, end quote. The judge says the first complaint and his opposition brief is just full of these similar irrelevant insults that don't have nothing to do with this case, misstatements and exaggerations. In response to Diddy's lawyer's understandable objections, Tyrone Blackburn hurled schoolyard taunts at them, writing, they're just so obsessed with me. The court has the inherent authority to sanction Tyrone Blackburn. So the judge is basically threatening a little bit. I mean, not in a violent way or anything, but it is kind of like, you know, not a threat of promise or something. The court is saying these people do not have to come to me and ask for a sanction, sir. I will sanction you myself and I have the authority to do so. So watch your step. That seems to be what the judge is kind of saying. While the court will not hold Blackburn's antics against Lil Rod Jones, who's actually the plaintiff at this point, Quote, it warns Blackburn that further misconduct may lead to sanctions or to referral for discipline. This lawyer has a professional obligation to both the court and his client to state the law accurately, to collaborate in a respectful and constructive manner with fellow lawyers, and to allow this litigation to proceed efficiently. The court is not going to hesitate to enforce this obligation moving forward. Okay, so Tyrone Blackburn did get admonished and specifically seemingly adjudicated to have committed misconduct. Okay, further misconduct. That implies that there was misconduct in the first place. So that's a very important aspect of this. And you might have seen, video titles and tweets and things going around like the judge warns Tyrone Blackburn. According to what I'm reading off this publicly filed document in federal court, and it is an order from a judge, that is true. It does appear that the judge did warn Tyrone Blackburn, and the judge is not going to be tolerating any more of the funny business. Now the judge gets to the RICO allegation. The RICO allegations in their entirety have been dismissed. Okay. The civil RICO allegations. Now, these allegations are underpinning and supporting the federal criminal case. However, they are not attached to each other. The federal criminal case is still barging straight ahead forward. The feds have more evidence, different victims, different allegations. So really, just because Lil Rod Jones's civil RICO was dismissed really has absolutely no bearing for the better or for the worse on Diddy's criminal case. It doesn't mean, this means the federal criminal one's more likely to get dismissed because the civil one did. No, that's not what that means. The federal one is moving forward. It could eventually be found that Diddy did not violate this statute. He could be found guilty. But this right here, what we're looking at is Lil Rod Jones's lawsuit. This is a civil tort. So the civil RICO dismissed. And the reason that the civil RICO was dismissed, according to the judge, is because Lil Rod Jones had to very specifically claim and plead that it was the RICO activities that directly caused his loss. And the judge has determined that his loss or his harm really is just not getting paid under the contract, which for me, I don't agree with, but I'm not the judge. I'm just telling y'all what the judge has found. So the RICO case cannot move forward because Lil Rod Jones and Tyrone Blackburn did not adequately plead it. The judge says here on page 10, the question of determining this RICO pleading moving forward past the motion to dismiss. Again, this was not to determine did Diddy violate the RICO or did he not? Did he suffer harm? Did he cause Lil Rod Jones to suffer harm? Did he not? No. The question for the court at this stage in this order was, can these claims even move forward? Is there even enough substance here to allow them to move forward in court? I think there was, but the judge said no. For the RICO claims, the judge says here, whether any of the other alleged RICO predicates or the pattern of racketeering activity in and of itself as a whole caused Diddy's failure to pay Jones. The court said they cannot identify this causal link, and therefore it was dismissed. Now, the second federal claim that Lil Rod Jones tried to make against Diddy was the Victim Protection Act. Diddy made a lot of strong arguments, a lot of aggressive arguments to say that this should not apply to him. Same arguments he made for RICO in some cases, that basically Lil Rod Jones did not allege enough evidence and he did not allege enough of the elements to actually survive. But on this federal charge, on this federal claim, federally based claim, this is again a tort. This is not a crime. The judge said, no, sorry, Diddy, I disagree with you on this one. The Victims Protection Act, Lil Rod Jones has actually pled plenty to move forward. So the RICO cause of action is dismissed and will not be argued in court. However, the equally as I think, my opinion, equally as serious and severe Victims Protection Act, that one does appear to stand. So the judge is going to let that one move forward as to Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs. He's also going to allow it to move forward as to Christina Karam. Okay, so Christina Karam and Sean P. Diddy Puff Daddy Combs, these two are going to move forward. They're getting sued. They got sued. They are defendants. They got to defend themselves on Victims Protection Act. Not RICO, but the Victims Protection Act. Now, the judge does also address Combs Global. 𝗟𝗡𝗡 Jones had also sued, along with Diddy and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, he had also sued Combs Global, but the judge said that the case against Combs Global is dismissed as Victims Protection Act because citing some Harvey Weinstein cases. It's interesting because the court actually relies on Weinstein cases and Epstein cases in his decision, which I just think is very interesting. But essentially, as far as the businesses are concerned, just merely paying for travel, just merely coordinating travel or transportation of an alleged so-called victim is not enough to bring the businesses in as a co-conspirator or as a co-defendant. And the judge did find here that there was no specific agreements made with Combs Global as to like NDAs or settlement agreements or anything like that. And so because the involvement of Combs Global was really kind of limited just to sort of like paying for stuff, the case against Combs Global as to the Victim Protection Act, the federal cause of action, is dismissed. So we're going to do a roundup at the end. I'm going to tell y'all like everything that has survived, but essentially no RICO case survived. And the TVPA, Victim Protection Act claim against Combs Global was dismissed, but the Victim Protection Act against Diddy and 𝗗𝗓𝗡𝗞𝗦 is moving forward, and they got 2 weeks to respond. Now, the judge moves on to the state tort claims, which, to remind you, are assault, emotional distress, premises liability, and breach of contract. So on the assault, the judge basically says Diddy doesn't do a very good job defending himself here, so it's going to move forward. That's not dismissed. 𝗟𝗡𝗡 Jones adequately pled, according to the court, they adequately pled that Diddy had assault. So that's going to move forward. Now, this does not mean that Diddy is guilty. It does not mean that Diddy is liable. It means that now we're going to have to go to the next stage of litigation, the discovery phase, for the court to determine if Diddy did it, etc. The next state tort claim is emotional distress. Both of these are dismissed. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, dismissed. Negligent infliction of emotional distress, dismissed. These are extremely difficult claims to ever win. They are very hard to win. Most of the time, people don't win them. We could get into why. I'm not going to do that today. But essentially, the judge says that 𝗟𝗡𝗡 Jones did not adequately plead one of the required elements, which is, quote, severe emotional distress. So IIED, intentional infliction of emotional distress, or negligent infliction of emotional distress, these are things that, like, if somebody does something to your kid right in front of you, something like that, like, and the kid, like something really very so extreme has to happen. So those aren't going to move forward. So on those, Diddy won. Now, does that mean Diddy won the whole thing? No, of course not. But in that way, he did. And 𝗟𝗡𝗡 did lose. The third state tort claim is the premises liability. So kind of saying like the fact that Diddy chartered a boat means he was in control of it. That fact that Diddy owned a home that a assault allegedly happened in means Diddy should be responsible because he owned the premises and he should have been responsible for what happened there. The judge actually does side with 𝗟𝗡𝗡 Jones on those arguments. 𝗟𝗜𝗡𝗞𝗦 had said that, one thing happened on a yacht, so that don't count, different things he tried to argue, but he lost. So the premises liability claim survives. It was not dismissed. On that one, 𝗟𝗡𝗡 Jones won and Diddy lost. And then the final cause of action did have to do with the breach of contract, which this one, I also disagree with the judge, but it could also be because I don't still to this day have a very solid understanding of the statute of frauds. It was something that was really hard for me to learn for the bar exam. I passed the bar exam with flying colors in New York, or it was the New Jersey bar, but it's the same test they take. Something specific about the statute of frauds, y'all. If you have a royalties agreement that is verbal in nature and the agreement cannot it's impossible for the agreement to have been effectuated by the defendant, which would have been Diddy, within 1 year, which can you pay me all the royalties within 1 year? The answer is no, because you're going to get royalties on a song for as long as the song exists. So for some reason, for that very specific odd reason, the whole breach of contract case gets thrown out. So no breach of contract. It's very strange. This is the weirdest finding for me. Again, that could be because of my own misunderstanding of the statute of frauds. I just don't understand how that would be precluded. But that's pretty much all of the actual causes of action. Then there's a little bit of miscellaneous that's still outstanding here, having to do with other defendants. In September, 𝗟𝗏 Jones had filed a letter with the court asking for an extension of time to serve defendants Justin Combs and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr. So he wants to sue them too. This is like September 2024, so 6 months ago. The court says 𝗟𝗏 has not since notified the court that he has served these parties. So accordingly, 𝗟𝗏 is directed to file a letter with the court explaining the status of service as to Justin and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr. within 2 weeks of this opinion. If he fails to do so, the claims against Justin Combs and 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr. may be dismissed for insufficient service or failure to prosecute. Also, 𝗟𝗏 has not yet served Jane Doe 1. Also, he's not provided any explanation for his failure to serve her. The court therefore dismisses 𝗟𝗏 Jones' claims against Jane Doe 1. Okay, so the Young Miami's cousin is off the hook. For the foregoing reasons, Diddy's motion to dismiss is granted in part and denied in part. The motion is granted as to the RICO claims. That means they are dismissed. The negligent infliction of emotional distress claims, dismissed. Intentional infliction of emotional distress claims by 𝗟𝗏 against Diddy, dismissed. Also, the breach of contract claims, dismissed. It's not going to go forward. The motion is also granted. So the motion to dismiss is also granted as to the Traffic Victim Protection Acts against Combs Global, which that's dismissed. So they're off the hook. Combs Global off the hook for the Traffic Victim Protection Act. Jane Doe off the hook for everything. Justin Combs, 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Jr., inconclusive. Diddy still on the hook for a few things, including premises liability, assault, and the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, as well as Christina Karam on the hook for the Victims Protection Act and possibly other acts. Finally, 𝗟𝗏's claims are dismissed as to John and Jane Doe's 1 through 10 and ABC Corporation's 1 through 10. Defendants who have been served shall file an answer to the surviving claims within 14 days after the date of this opinion. So Diddy did win in some ways, and Diddy did lose in some ways. 𝗟𝗏 Jones did win in some ways, and 𝗟𝗏 Jones did lose in some ways. Tyrone Blackburn did get a warning, and he did get a threat that if he keeps his misconduct up, he is going to be possibly sanctioned by this judge. And that's all I had for today. In the meantime, facts ain't defamation, and be careful who you're listening to out there, girl. Love you, Mina. Okay, bye.
Man, I know one thing, man. I was, especially to Rod Jones. Shout out to 𝗟𝗏, man, because he kind of opened the wormhole. He kind of opened the hole to say, Diddy can be touched. You know, his stuff may not have went all the way through. It may not have sunk into people, but then somebody else throw something out there. Then somebody else throw something out there. Then all of a sudden, Diddy can be sued. But I know one thing, boy. Lil Ron might have opened up that little hole. But when that Cassidy video, I don't care what y'all say, talking about the statue ran out. The statue ran out. I know what ran out. Puffy ran out that daggone room and hit that little girl. Shame on you. Big as you is, big as you are, you ran out there and you beat. I'm glad he's still in jail. Just for that one thing. If you mean to tell me you can buy anything, you have no problems in this world, and you gonna do this to that little girl, what is the point? I don't understand what the point is. Beating on somebody that you know you can whoop. Bullying a female. That ain't right. It's not right. Oh my gracious, man. Look here. I'm going to get on up out of here. I ain't doing nothing but making myself pissed off. Oh my gracious, man. I don't think I'm big and bad, but I ain't hitting on no girl, no little kids, somebody I know I can whoop. That ain't no fun. Attack somebody that's hurting somebody else. make you feel good. Yeah, it makes you feel good when you take up for other people, man. I'm gonna get on up out of here. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell them Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.